Okay, I'm going to talk about SAM, semi-authentic materials, and what this consists of, and how you can create your own SAM materials. Okay, so authentic material is any material not produced for second language learners. And that could be scripted or not scripted, but the key thing here is it's not originally intended for language learners. Non-authentic material is material specifically produced for language learners, but has little resemblance to authentic language use. So this is the kind of stuff we find in textbooks, course books, and it's often scripted, and it's often designed to capture a particular grammatical structure. Semi-authentic material, or SAM, is material specially produced for language learners, so in that sense it's non-authentic, but it attempts to present authentic language use. So because it is produced for language learners, we can't call it authentic, but it attempts to be as authentic as possible. And that's what we're going to explore. So, what are the features of semi-authentic listening material? Well, firstly, SAM is not scripted. There's no script involved. It is spontaneous. SAM doesn't use actors. It uses regular people. That is, your friends, your colleagues, your relatives, but definitely not actors or anybody who's attempting to be an actor. Next, SAM asks regular people to talk about topics they already know about. So we're not inventing stuff here. People are talking about experiences that they have experienced. They may be talking about a holiday they're going to make, a trip they're going to go on, a vacation. Or they may be talking about a trip they've just come back from. But it's all based upon something that's real. Next, the interviewer is usually the producer of the materials. The interviewer helps prompt the speaker, and the interviewer, for the most part, is the teacher. And because the teacher knows exactly the kinds of materials he or she wants to produce. For the purposes of the classroom, a good length for a SAM listening is about 2 minutes. More than that, and you're eating into a lot of classroom time, because for the most part, when we're doing a listening in the classroom, we probably need to play it about 3 times. Okay, let's talk about how to make a SAM listening material. Firstly, choosing your subject. Who are you going to talk to? Well, you need to choose your subject well, and you need to make that choice based upon someone who's good at talking, and that means someone who's articulate. Next, find someone who can make themselves comprehensible to the intended audience of second language learners, but still be natural. That could be someone who has had experience of language teaching or who is a teacher, and so knows the level of accommodation that you're trying to aim at. Subjects to avoid are those particular subjects who make the conversation too simple, and at the other extreme are subjects who have no sensitivity to accommodating to the level of the listeners and use a lot of maybe very specific vocabulary. And finally, find subjects who represent an interesting range of accents. So we want males, we want females, we want older people, and we want kids, as well as subjects who are in their 20s and 30s. Also find some regional accents too. And finally, see if you can find some second language speakers who are also expert users of English. So, aim for a broad range, if possible, of different accents. 2. Choosing the topics for SAM. Okay, so as I said before, you're going to choose topics that you know your subjects are familiar with and are able to talk about. Next, choose topics that will be familiar to your students. So they have to have some knowledge, some background knowledge of what is being talked about. So we're looking at kind of universal themes here. Describe your dream house. We all perhaps have thought about that. Describe a holiday you took. Describe a vacation you're going to take in the future. What do you think you'll be doing 10 years from now? Okay, so these are all pretty universal topics that just about everyone can relate to. Okay, here are some examples of topics for semi-authentic material. Some of them we've already mentioned. So going on vacation, find out where, for how long, the type of accommodation, and the activities your subject is going to do. Similarly, a recent vacation, find out where your subject went on vacation, for how long, the accommodations they stayed in, the activities, things they did, etc. Next one is a geographical location. Find out where your subject comes from. The location, the population, the climate, things to do there, what are the people like, best time of the year to visit, etc. Here's another one. The best and worst places your subject has been to. Describe your family tree. How do you spend a typical Saturday or Sunday? And then describing objects. Choose 2 or 3 objects. Your subject describes them according to size, shape, weight, material used, their use, but does not say the name of the object. So you describe an object without actually naming it according to those categories, and the listening task is to find out what that particular object is. Next, describe a room in your house and describe your dream house. Then we could find out if your subject has a special interest or hobby. That could be very specialized, so you need to be careful about what you choose there. But many people have very special interests, and that's a really good topic to talk about. Finally, regrets. What are some of the things you regret about when you were in grade school? Everyone has regrets. It takes a little time, of course, to plan these particular topics. So you need to allow your subjects to think about what they're going to say, not for a long time, and certainly not to script it, but to just give them a little planning time so that they're ready to speak when you record. Think of a series of prompts or questions because you want to keep the conversation going. As the interviewer, you need to be able to guide the conversation, and that's why you can't just have a random, free-flowing conversation. You need to have some guidelines. You need to have some prompts which are going to correspond to your graphic organizer, which will allow your students to make notes about the interview. You don't want your subjects to go on too much with regard to one particular question. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to manage them and then nudge them to the next prompt or question. Next, you may need to prompt your subjects if they have too little to say. So be ready to ask some follow-up questions. And finally, be prepared to clarify, repeat information for the benefit of the listener. We do this naturally in an interview situation. You summarize, or you say things like, okay, if I've got that right, or you can ask a question which asks for information to be repeated. 4. Planning time. I've already mentioned this, but tell your subject what you're going to ask them about. Give them the questions or the graphic organizer with the prompts and ask them to think about the answers. Planning time is going to help your subject gather their thoughts and so be more articulate. But, as I've said before over and over again, do not script the interview. Okay, a note on recording. Before you begin, check your recording device before. It's very frustrating to find out that it's not working, or you didn't turn it on correctly, or something happened so you missed that first take. Think about ambient noise. Ambient noise is good to the extent that it makes it authentic, but you don't want too much ambient noise, which makes it difficult to hear the conversation. You can think about using a quiet space to record. Be sure to place your subject closer to the microphone than you are. You will naturally raise the volume of your voice, but your subjects may not. So you know what you want, and you know the kind of volume levels you're trying to get at. So you're going to speak up, but your subject may not. So make sure that they are the ones who are the closest to the microphone. And if there are recording problems, communication breakdowns, mistakes, just try it again. But don't aim for perfection, and usually first takes are the best. Our recording length. I mentioned before that an ideal recording length is about 2 minutes. I say 2 minutes because when you use your recording in class, you'll need to play it 3 or more times. And have a look at the presentation on how to do a listening for more information about that. Longer recordings will just not allow time for multiple playings and will place too much cognitive load on the students. Listening for 5-6 minutes is a lot more difficult than listening for 2 minutes. If you do find you've got longer listenings, then you can think about maybe editing them, listen to a first part of it, or allowing them to be used for in a self-access situation or for homework. Okay, an essential part of semi-authentic material is the design of a graphic organizer. When you think up these ideas for semi-authentic material, you probably will be thinking of prompts, and those prompts are going to go into your graphic organizer. So a graphic organizer is any visual representation of the text. And a grid is the most common type of graphic organizer, and you can look at the special lecture on examples of semi-authentic material and examples of graphic organizers. Instead of writing full comprehension questions, just use topic headings and allow space for students to make notes. These topic headings may be the same as the prompts question you used in the interview. So the graphic organizer is reflecting the way that you have organized your interview. 8. If you have time, and this is time consuming, see if you can transcribe a part of your recording. And there's various reasons for doing this. First, by transcribing a part of your recording, you will notice interesting uses of pronunciation and grammatical structures, which you can highlight in your focus on the formal features of the language used in the listening. It's often through transcribing that you can begin to notice particular pronunciation points, particular grammatical usage, which you can focus upon in your focus on form part of your listening. You'll also find extracts which you can use for intensive listening using a gap filler or dictation. You don't have to give them the whole script. That would be too overwhelming, but take a part of it. And part of your listening should be a focus on intensive listening. So if they do a little part of it as a dictation, then you can then give them the transcript, or you can make it a little easier and use a gap filler, but just a small amount, not the whole thing. So, as I said there, unless you're using it for self-access, then there's no need to transcribe the whole recording. 9. Can't stress enough that this is really valuable material. So you need to keep your recordings safe. You need to make multiple copies because this is material, and the ones that you have listened to or will listen to in the examples are material I made many years ago, and it's still material that I think is fresh and lively and can be used today. So think in terms of investing in material that lasts you a lifetime and not just a one-off to be used in one class.